has been in existence since 1987. I always say you can tell how old we are because Governor Mario Cuomo started us. So our focus is on, and he was concerned about the high infant mortality and low birth weight rates in New York State. So he made these 16 networks, and we're one of those networks. So we have 3 programs. Our 2 big programs, we basically care for pregnant and parenting moms, mostly on the east and west side of Buffalo, and mostly African American and Hispanic because they have the worst rates in those categories. We also have a fatherhood program, which we started a couple years ago because I felt like there was really not a lot with dads, so we thought it was important. So we have our 2 women's programs. We have a Healthy Families New York program, which is all our programs are free and they're all home-based. So Healthy Families links with pregnant women, and then they start visiting them in their home, depending on where they are in their pregnancy. When the baby's born, we're in there every week for 6 months, and we follow them until the baby's 5. So it's a pretty long relationship. They talk about parenting and child development and prevention of child abuse and neglect. And then our other program is our community health worker program, which works with pregnant and parenting, but also works with women who've never had a baby. So that could be a teen or a young woman. But they're really looking for women that are not connected to the system. So they actually, pre-COVID, did a lot of street outreach, and they probably got 70% of their referrals. So they go into the neighborhoods, they knock on doors, they hand their cards out. They do pretty intensive case management. So the first thing they'll do is make sure that the woman has health insurance and a provider. But then we work with them on everything from housing to food to baby basics. Stabilize them, and they can stay. If there's a child, they can stay with the program for 2 years. We have very good outcomes as far as our immunization rates for our kids, our initiation into prenatal care, our attendance at prenatal care visits, our well child visits, smoking cessation. Obviously, the biggest bang for our buck that people get is when we get a mom full term, because then we avoid a stay in the intensive care nursery, which is very costly. And then we run support groups at the agency for depression. We call it our empowerment group. We also do breastfeeding. We have a scrapbooking group for our crafty moms. They like it. And just general educational sessions. And I think that gives you an overview. Dr. Laley, who we've referenced, so Dr. Laley, in case you don't know who she is, she was a maternal fetal physician who worked for years out of originally Children's Hospital, Women and Children's, Oshai Children's. I actually worked with her because I worked there as an OB, and she was just a wonderful, wonderful doctor and woman. She unfortunately passed away, and her family, her husband is actually an oncologist at Roswell, and they directed donations to the agency. She had actually received our yearly award that we give out several years ago. And then we decided we were going to do the Bequest Society, that we would name it in her honor, because she really did. She took care of high-risk moms, just in a very, very gentle woman, and was very well respected. So that's why we named it the Dr. Amal Laley Bequest. And I think that's it. Turning it over.
Great. Do you want me to go ahead, Denise?
Yes, please, Michael.
You got it. Let's see if I get the right screen. How's that? Can everyone see?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think what I put together is 5 ideas to improve your financial life. And they're just some topics that we thought might be relevant for people. And I'll go through those. But first, we have a couple disclosures. Compliance says I have to put this in here, that I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA. So if none of this is legal or accounting tax advice, you should seek that out with somebody that's certified to do that for you. And anything that may in this presentations show some sort of past performance does not indicate future results. You've all heard that before. So nothing in here is a promise. So the 5 ideas to improve your financial life are, I'm going to go over in our opinion, the top 3 best ways to save: tax efficient charitable giving ideas, behavior management. Key to that is stocks are for the long run, focus on what you control, and take care of yourself. And the first one, our top 3 ways to save. One of the best ways to save for people that have maybe cash at a bank account is look into online savings accounts. And I see this often as a financial planner dealing with people that are approaching retirement and have a lot of cash on hand, and they are making almost nothing at the local bank. There are online savings accounts that are FDIC insured banks that you can transfer your money to. And right now, the rates are around 0.5%, but it's better than nothing. And they tend to go up and tend to be more aggressive than what you'll get at your local bank here in town. And a good resource, if you're interested, is you could go to a website called NerdWallet and go to NerdWallet online savings. And every month they rank the best ones. But generally over the years, the best online savings banks have been Marcus, Discover, as in Discover Card Bank, Ally Bank, American Express Bank, CIT Bank. And I always tell people it's very convenient to get your money there. They're happy to get your money, so they'll be happy to help you set up accounts, but it's very easy to do online. And you can transfer money from your bank account there and earn a little better interest. Make sure you the second bullet point is make sure you maximize your company's 401k match. If, for example, some 401k plans may say we'll match you 50 cents for each dollar you put in up to 3% of your pay. Make sure you save 3% because that's free money. You don't want to give that up at any time if you can take advantage of it. And then if you can take advantage of a health savings account, this is another wonderful tax efficient way to save. In fact, it's the best tax efficient way to save. And I'm just going to touch base on that over the next couple slides just to give a little background in case people aren't familiar with health savings account. But to have a health savings account, you have to be in what's called the high deductible plan. So usually a high deductible plan will have a deductible of $1,400 in your medical plan for a single, and I believe it's $2,800 for a family. So you have to pay if you're single, the first $1,400 out of pocket before the kind of traditional insurance kicks in where you have a $20 copay at the doctor and so forth. One of the things about high deductible plans is kind of your routine services, annual physicals, mammograms, well baby visits. Those are all free under a high deductible plan. But any other type of services, you have to hit the deductible before it kicks in. But if you have a high deductible plan, you can open what's called a health savings account. And the wonderful thing about a health savings account is you can save money tax exempt. So pre-tax dollars go into the health savings account. It grows tax free. And if you take the money out for qualified medical expenses, it's never taxed. So a lot of people will just use health savings accounts as an additional long-term savings vehicle because we all know when we get older in retirement, we're going to have medical bills that aren't covered, and we can use our health savings account towards that. And you can even use it towards your Medicare deductibles on your Part B, which I won't go into too much detail on that. But the beauty of the health savings account is it's a triple tax advantaged vehicle. So if you have a high deductible plan through work and you can take advantage of a health savings account, it's a wonderful savings vehicle. And this just kind of shows what I mentioned before, triple tax savings. So the top row here is a health savings account. The contributions go in pre-tax, they grow tax deferred, and they come out tax exempt from the account if you use it for a qualified medical expense. And this is a little, this slide, I got this from Vanguard. They're a mutual fund company, and they had a couple slides on this. And even they say, where should you save money first? Employer plan with matching contributions, and then number two, your HSA, and then other tax advantage plans like Roth or traditional IRAs. So those are the tax savings tips. Tax efficient charitable giving ideas. A lot of people want to give money to charity. A few years ago, with the tax law changes and higher deductibles for family and single people, a lot of people are just taking the standard deduction and not itemizing. And so that has been a little bit of a disincentive to give to charity, but there are ways around that, especially for some people that have accumulated wealth. And a great way to give to charity is through what's called a qualified charitable deduction. And in order to do that, you have to be over age 70 and a half. And what a qualified charitable distribution, known as a QCD, what that is that's money right out of your IRA account that comes out tax-free. Normally it's taxed, and it can go to the charity of your choice. The other powerful thing about the QCD is that it can count towards your required minimum distribution. So when you turn age 72, the government says, the IRS says you have to take money out of your IRA and it has to be taxed. There's a formula that you have to follow to pull money out. But if you send some of that money, if you send some money out, let's say the government says you have to take 20,000 out this year, but you want to give $5,000 to your favorite charity, that 5,000 comes out tax-free and accounts towards your required minimum distribution. So now you only have to take another 15,000 out to be taxed on. And we have some tools, and most financial planning software has tools now that show the benefit of that. And I've got some clients that even if they're doing a few $1,000s a year, will save $40,000 or $50,000 in taxes over their lifetime. So QCDs, or qualified charitable distributions, are a wonderful vehicle for people that want to get money out of their IRAs when they're over age 70 and a half. Donor advised funds, another tool that people are using is a donor advised fund. You can set up a donor advised fund at Charles Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, any place that holds what we call a custodian. So any place that's a custodian of investment assets. So a donor advised fund is a fund that will hold money. You can invest in it, but let's say you want to contribute $50,000 to it. That $50,000 becomes a charitable deduction on your taxes, and then you can disperse that money over time to the charities of your choice. So donor advised funds are something that people with wealth are starting to utilize more and more. Appreciated shares, if you have stock or an investment that has grown in value over time, you can give that to a charity and get a tax deduction for it and not be forced to pay capital gains. So let's say you bought Apple computer 30 years ago for $1,000 of Apple computer, now it's worth 100,000. Normally you'd have to pay tax on that $99,000 in gain, but if you gave it to a charity, then that $99,000 in gain is exempt from capital gains tax, and you get the benefit of a charitable deduction. And then there's charitable remainder trusts is another option. And a charitable remainder trust is a trust you set up. You can, let's say you had $50,000, and you wanted to give it to charity upon your death. Instead of putting it in your will, you can put $50,000 in the trust and take income off of it for the rest of your life. And the remainder will then go to the charity upon your passing. So those are some vehicles that are available to people to give. And I'd like to emphasize that if anybody has interest in that, They should talk to their CPA. Everybody has unique tax situations. So any one of these may be better for you than another. So these are some ideas for charitable giving. The next one is really like to talk about this a lot is behavioral management. So many people let their own behaviors get in the way of long-term financial success. And this is a little picture by a guy named Carl Richards, who does these for the New York Times. But this kind of goes over the roller coaster of uh, investor behavior over time. And usually everyone buys high and then sells low when you really should be buying low and selling high. And he kind of says, most people do this over time and they repeat till they're broke. But one of the things you want to do, especially in the stock market and with behavioral management, one of the techniques I use with clients is say, bucket your stock portfolio. If understand that anything that you have in stocks is money you're not going to touch for 10 years or more. So you don't care, what is happening today in the market. You know that over long periods of time, stocks go up. And I've got a couple slides to emphasize that in a minute. But a little mental accounting goes a long way instead of watching the news, hearing people panic. We had that yesterday. We had that Friday where the new variant was announced, and some people were worried that that will close down the economy. And at the same time, there was some stuff with worries about inflation. So it was a little bit of a double whammy, but people start to get worried. And I've heard it over and over again the past few months. Oh, we're due for a correction. I keep telling people, I don't care. I mean, I don't mean to, I do care, but you shouldn't care as long as you don't need to touch your stock money for 10 years. And any money you had, unless you're speculating, your stock money should be 10-year money that you're not going to need to touch. So you don't care about who's getting elected this year or what, is going on with this tax law change. Just know that over time, nothing outperforms stocks, and just bucket that money and don't let your emotions and fears control that. Easier said than done. But one of the things to kind of emphasize this is that, stocks for the long run, I love this slide because it shows a lot of different events over the last 50 years that were terrifying to people, that had huge headlines, that probably had a lot of financial planners and advisors talking to their clients for hours. And over that length of time, $1 invested in the stock market would be worth $80 today. And there was a lot of trauma in between then and now. And as I always tell people, as long as capitalism stays alive, the market will keep going up. It's just like walking uphill with a yo-yo. The market goes up and down, but you're trending up over time. And then this is a little longer look at stocks, but you can see $1. This shows $1 invested in 1926 in different categories. Small company stocks, which are the riskiest stocks, are worth over $32,000 today. Large company stocks, you hear about the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, would be worth almost 11,000, and then safe government bonds and would be $205, and treasury bills $22, and inflation would be worth $15 if you want to look at inflation that way. So nothing outperforms stocks over the long run, and you just have to keep saying that to yourself and not let your emotions get in the way. I also like this too. This is one that I saw many years ago that it's always stuck with me, and I always love when it gets updated and I show people this because you get a lot of people saying, well, should I get out of the market and then wait for it to recover? The problem is you don't know when to get out. And then the other problem is you don't know when to get back in. And this shows if you just miss the best, if you would have just missed the best day over the last 30 years, your return would have went in the stock market from 10.23 to 9.84. If you would have missed the best 5, you would have went from 10.23 to 8.6. If you would have missed the best 15 days, you would have been down to 6.52. So you need to stay in it. Stocks are for the long run. I sound like a broken record, but you need to bucket your stocks and remember this slide when you think you want to dance in or out. And then the next thing you can do, especially around stocks and your whole long-term plan, is you do only what you can do, and that's focus on what you can control. You can't control what news is going to come out tomorrow and affect your portfolio. So what you want to do is you want to create an investment plan that meets your risk profile and your needs, and develop a stock and bond mix that is consistent with that. And you can do it yourself. You can use any sort of advisor that you feel comfortable with. The other big piece of that is diversify globally. You want to have some international stocks and bonds because they are great diversifiers. A lot of people have home country bias. And the next slide I'm going to show you in a second shows the benefit of having an international allocation versus just staying with the US. And that's consistent around the world. People in Japan have a bias towards their own country stocks. In Canada, the same thing. Us in the US, we have our US bias. So the other thing you can do is manage your expenses, the turnover, and taxes. And as I've been emphasizing, stay disciplined through the ups and downs. And I love this chart because this shows the benefit of international diversification. This goes back to 1970 through 2018. And it shows the orange line is the S&P 500, but the blue line is if you had about 60% S&P 500 and the rest in international stocks, and what your stock portfolio would have grown to. So I throw that in there a lot into a lot of my presentations because I often get the question, oh, you're recommending international stocks. Should I really hold international stocks? Because we have hindsight bias. We have the US market has done great the last few years, but there's been decades where the US market is like the international market, and people forget that. So there's a 5-slide series with this. I just show the last slide for this presentation, but the 5-slide series shows the 1970s, how the S&P did against a US international mix, and then the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and 2010. And this one just pulls them all together. So it's important that you invest globally. And I emphasize that because, like I said, I hear that a lot in my practice. Why do we have international stocks? And even international bonds are a great diversifier as well. And then fifth, I like to tell people all of this doesn't matter if you don't take care of yourself. You can't enjoy what you have now. You can't live the good life in retirement if you don't take care of yourself. And I love these couple quotes. The first one attributed to Abraham Lincoln. It's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. And then Confucius, a sick man only wants one thing, a healthy man wants 1,000 things. And some of this is coming out of a series of blogs and videos I'm going to be doing with Level Financial Advisors on the non-financial pieces of retirement. We were saving, we're planning, and it doesn't do any good to get to retirement and not have your mind and body with you. And one of the slides I want to, the last slide here is in the series, I've decided to start it out with discussion on the book, The Blue Zones. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing in this with these slides, but a man named Dan Buettner, who was with the National Geographic, he was working with some other explorers, and 20 years ago, they were identifying parts of the world that had the most centenarians, the most people that had lived to 100, and they were circling those areas with blue pencil, and they became known as the blue zones. And those 5 areas of the world are a section of Sardinia, which is an island of Italy, an island off of Japan, Okinawa, Ikaria, which is a Greek island, a section of Costa Rica, and the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. And all these people all these areas, I should say, have the most centenarians. And so what this Dan Buettner did was start looking at these areas and he found some commonality between them all. And I think this is just a wonderful way to live and a wonderful way to start people out and living their best life. So what they've sacrificed and worked for can be optimized in retirement. And the various things that he found that had commonality between the 5 different blue zones were one, move naturally. All the people in the blue zones move naturally. We're not talking about CrossFit or running marathons. They're always moving. They get their steps in. They all had a sense of purpose. The Okinawans call it ikigai. What's the reason for getting out of bed in the morning? And for some, it could be catching fish for the family. Others, it's babysitting the grandkids, and other, it's continuing to work as a financial planner. Whatever that sense of purpose is, they all basically eat a Mediterranean diet. As he phrases it, plant slant. But there's a journalist named Michael Pollan who wrote a couple books on food a number of years ago, and he summed up everything as far as diet, and that's eat food, not a lot, mostly plants. So, and that's what these people do in the blue zones. Another thing is eating in moderation. As Buettner says in the book, the Japanese in Okinawa will say "hari hakibu" before they eat, which means eat until I'm 80% full. I try that on a regular basis. I'm still working on it, but it's in a sense a way of, you've always heard, okay, when you start to feel full, stop, because it takes a while for your brain to register that. So all these places eat in moderation. They get good sleep. They belong. And a lot of it is religious belonging. It doesn't mean you have to have a fierce faith in a God, but what he found was it's just by being part of a religious organization, you belong to a healthy tribe. And love ones first, keep your family close. The right tribe is more around surround yourself with people that will support your lifestyle. And the last one, downshift, spend time for yourself and relax. The last thing I'll say on this is, it's funny, just before this, I was reading a brief article, and I can't remember the book offhand, but they were referencing this book about how people can't even do anything anymore. And we feel so guilty as Americans. We can't relax. And in this article, they were talking about these people that watch Saturday Night Live, and they actually log the minutes of the different comedians and the number of skits they do and the time in the skits. And she said, the author said, people can't even watch a comedy show without making it a something that's about efficiencies. So I think us Americans are we're driven that way, but you need to pull back. So that's, I think, of all the lessons, this may be the most important one of all. Like I said, because you can't enjoy what you've saved for unless you have a healthy mind and body. So those are my 5 tips. Any questions? We'll move on to Elizabeth.
No, I just think that's so amazing that you added that at the end, because as an elder law attorney, I know I meet with people at their retirement age, and they're ready to finally enjoy doing X, Y, and Z. And it's heartbreaking when you meet people who, they've saved and they've worked really hard, and and now they don't have their health to do everything that they've kind of put off, and for some too late. So that's really important. That'd be part of your presentation. So I really appreciated that.
Oh, Thanks. And I see it in my practice too. And it's interesting, even just, and I'm careful in stepping into things with folks because, as people get older, they're set in their ways. But I remember a couple of weeks ago, I just had a conversation, just mentioned walking, and I knew that wasn't going to go very far, but, walking is a super drug. I mean, the stuff I've read, and even with Alzheimer's and dementia, some of the stuff I've been reading is walking, that Mediterranean diet, a lot of green leafy vegetables. I mean, you got to feed your brain healthy things and get oxygen to it. And I do, to your point, Elizabeth, I mean, I see that too with some of my retiree clients, and it is something out there, but hopefully, people can just maybe grab one or two things and get to a healthier place and enjoy what they have. All right, I'll turn it over to you. I'll stop. Oh, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully it is not, but this is the one I'm going to be able to click. I knew that was going to happen. I just knew it. Okay, let me try again. Okay. Now I cannot find it. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna just try to go into, well, you can see all my stuff, homeschooling. Aren't we all sick of that? Estate planning. Let's see if I can just reopen it. In the beginning, okay. So for everyone who's listening, I'm Elizabeth Ingold. I'm a trust and estates and elder law attorney. I have a practice, Ingold Law, that's located right in the village of Williamsville, right in the heart of the village. And as I mentioned, when I meet with a lot of clients who are older, about the retirement age, doing a lot of like asset protection, elder law planning, but just basically the vast majority of my work is in the area of getting people's estate plans in order. So this evening, I'm going to go on about review what does estate planning mean? What does that involve? How do people even begin to get their affairs in order? And so we'll just start with, you've got estate planning. What is it? It involves basically establishing a plan about who will eventually receive your assets. It also makes known how you want your affairs to be handled if you're unable to handle them on your own for any reason. So estate planning isn't just planning for a person's death, but it's also planning in the case that they become incapacitated or temporarily disabled, or disabled and unable to handle their affairs themselves. It can be a complicated process. It can definitely feel overwhelming at times to folks, but I think the point is of doing estate planning is once I'm finished with a client, and everything is addressed and put into order, there is definitely a sense of accomplishment and a peace of mind. I know that's slightly cliche to say, but it is a peace of mind in getting your affairs in order. And so, and there's many misconceptions out there, and I'll try to address them as I'm going through these slides. I think it's, as Michael was talking about, it's sometimes more than just dealing with your finances. And certainly, but putting together your finances and your legal documents and having good handle on taxes is certainly is the name of the game. All right, so here I kind of talk about estate planning is putting things in order, and addressing everything, making sure that everything fits together. Because sometimes people come in and maybe they have, part of their plan done, and maybe they have a false sense of security that everything is addressed. And then I mentioned them like 15 other things that they really need to go back and make sure are put in order. It's all about making sure that, that person is protected their wishes are honored, and also that you're basically safeguarding your family from if tragedy arises or there's a crisis, a health crisis, that the family, knows, okay, like here's what we do next, and here's what we do next with this. And there's definitely, like a cohesive plan that really holds the whole family together. Because it's not at the end of the day going to be something that you're going to be dealing with, it's going to be your loved ones. So how does one begin the process of even putting together an estate plan? First you want to inventory your assets and know what you own. Michael may, encounter this in his practice. I certainly do. I sit down with couples, of various ages, at different stages of life, different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, and different levels of wealth. And you would be surprised that people don't know what they own, right? Or they maybe, as I'm looking at a document, and I'm saying, well, whose account is this, or who is on this account? One spouse may know everything, the other spouse might not know anything, or maybe both of them are wrong. I'm like, well, do you guys own, all? Yes, we own everything together. And then I start to go through their statements, just as a simple exercise. And, the husband owns the wife's life insurance or vice versa. And, if that one spouse dies who owns the life insurance, then the other spouse, even though it's their life insurance, the company won't talk to them because they don't own that policy. So, another big one is, I meet with folks and, they own everything together, but, the wife's house isn't his name isn't on the deed, or the husband had gone, to a tax auction and purchase a rental property and the wife's name is not on it. And then there's all the misconceptions or misunderstandings that, oh, but we're husband and wife, and that's automatically hers, or that's automatically mine, or there's all people believe all different kinds of things. But the harsh reality comes if somebody does happen to pass away or becomes incapacitated, and the well spouse or the surviving spouse is sitting there going, I can't do anything with this asset, and I really need to. Because a lot of times what I'm doing as an elder law attorney is we're in emergency mode, trying to piece things together and making sure that everything runs smoothly. Understand how your assets pass at death. And I'm going to touch upon this in a different slide. I think that's a definitely misconception is, a lot of times people, they husband and wife have their one daughter as their beneficiary on all of their assets. And then they say, well, we've beneficiaried everything to our daughter, Jennifer, but Jennifer is the executor of our will. So she has to follow what our will says, and everything will be then passed on to our 6 kids. And I have to tell them, as I'm sure Michael's had to tell his clients, and say, no, Jennifer gets everything. And it's up to her to do what your will says, because everything doesn't go according to the will. And I'll get more on that as we discuss the different ways that property passes at death. But these are things that you need to start to comprehend and review when beginning to put together an estate plan. Really know what you own. How is each individual asset going to pass on at your death? Or your passing, I guess is a nice way of putting it. You need to understand the difference between having an estate plan and a will. Again, simply having a will is great. That's part of the puzzle, but it is not the end all be all, right? You have to really make sure that all of your other affairs are in order. And really part of, having an estate plan is having your documents in order, but that's not just the will. That is all of your other essential documents. So we're going to be going over that in the next few slides. And I say this, meet with the trust and estates and elder law attorney. And this is no disrespect to other attorneys, but when you're really looking to, just like when you're looking to work with a physician, right? And you think you're having some health or heart issues, right? You're not going to your dentist. to find out what you should do about your heart condition, right? You're not going to your foot doctor to, you know, if you suspect that you're having a serious health ailment elsewhere in the body, right? So you really need to, and I think this is, people haven't really come to this conclusion yet, but, you know, much like the medical field, the legal field is very much diversified and specialized, right? Again, so I mean, I would never, as trust and estates and elder law attorney, you know, put together a real estate deal or a contract or a divorce, and I'm not going to represent someone in a murder trial. So really, you need to make sure that you're meeting with someone who this is their area of focus, because given the experience, they know what, you know, they know everything. I can almost like see the future. Sounds a little kooky, but like I can see what would be happening if people continued on having their affairs handled in a certain way. Or I can see, like, you know, a crisis on the horizon, or things that have to be addressed immediately or soon, to make sure that people are protected as well as their families. All right, so what are the essential estate planning documents? You know, many people have a healthcare proxy, right? A living will, not to be confused with a last will and testament. A living will is describes your end of life wishes. Typically, they are attached to the healthcare proxy, and I'll go over what those documents are in a minute. Power of attorney, in my opinion, the most overlooked document, but certainly I believe to be the most important. I guess people could argue the last one testament, but the power of attorney is the document that controls why you're still alive. So that is a very, very important contract that you would be signing, the power of attorney, and the last one testament. So the healthcare proxy is a document that appoints a person to make medical decisions for you if ever you're unable to make medical decisions for yourself, right? So oftentimes people might get a healthcare proxy given to them by a physician, if they're new to a doctor's office or they're going in for a procedure. Oftentimes though, when I see a healthcare proxy come into my office with clients, they bring in their documents, the healthcare proxies are not executed properly, right? They've listed all 3 kids as agents. Can I have that? That would cause havoc at the hospital in a time of crisis. They've got, you know, they list their daughter Susan, and then Susan's the, you know, the witness. You know, they've got a healthcare proxy. They don't have a living will that specifies what type of treatment they would or would not want to have if they were unable to communicate. You know, if they were unable to, if they're not believed to ever make a recovery and they want to make sure that, you know, their agent can remove or withdraw or withhold life-sustaining treatment. You know, if somebody might not have, they might have that in their mind, and they might write on their healthcare proxy, my agent knows my wishes, but really in New York State, you have to have it spelled out, right? So when you're putting together an estate plan, these are 2 documents that truly need to be reviewed and by your attorney, and if not, brand new ones drafted. Now, some attorneys do a separate healthcare proxy and living will. Others combine them into a single document. So you might have just one, but you want to make sure you have the living will language that allows for your agent to make end of life decisions, like sending a DNR or withdrawing, withholding life sustaining treatment if that's your wish. Power of attorney, I quite frankly could give a 45-minute to an hour presentation just on this document, but I'll just briefly go over it here. The power of attorney is a document that gives authority to another person or persons to handle all of your financial and legal affairs. Basically, you're appointing someone to be your guardian, to be your advocate. If ever you're unable to act on your own behalf, that person is the one who's going to step into your shoes, right? And, you know, everybody wonders like, who should have one? And my answer is anyone over the age of 18. Truth be told, I have clients bringing in their college-bound children, you know, who are age 18, heading off to college in the fall. They haven't bring them into my office in the summer, because once that child turns age 18, the parents no longer have the right to speak on behalf of their child. They can't deal with anything with financial aid on behalf of their child. Deal with the health insurance company, even though it's their policy on behalf of the kid if there's any medical billing issues. So really anyone over the age of 18. A common misconception I've heard when people come in like, well, we don't need a power of attorney because, my husband and I were married, we own everything together, which again, people don't own everything together. And also people are very shocked to find out that as soon as, that they're very surprised to find out that even if they've been married for 40 years, when they call their husband's pension company, the company won't speak to them, right? Because even though they're married, they still need to have the power of attorney. Or truth be told, I'll tell you one of my first, can you just hold on 1 second? Sorry. Oh, it's the fun of Zoom calls. Sorry about that, guys. Without it, a guardianship will be necessary. So a common story I tell people is one of my first guardianships that I did right out of law school was for a wife whose husband was in a terrible motorcycle accident. He did not have a power of attorney. She was unable to access some of their investments, and they happened to have been in the midst of selling their home and purchasing a new home. So we had to do an emergency guardianship proceeding. He was still alive, but we were unsuccessful in bringing him out of his artificial coma, right? So had to go to court to get his wife appointed so they could sell their home and purchase their new home, and she could cover the medical expenses. The power of attorney has changed somewhat dramatically in this past summer. From 2009 to June of 2021, there was both the power of attorney and the statutory gift rider. So if you had a document done prior to June of 2021 and you want to know if what you have is sufficient, I will tell you that you want to make sure that you had a document, the power of attorney, and an associated statutory gift rider. And I'm gonna just say you have to have both. Just take me at my word on that. But since June, they did get rid of the statutory gift rider. The Bar Association wanted to simplify things, but I will tell you this. My power of attorney and gift rider was 22 pages, and now my power of attorney is 20. So even though the power of attorney form has been somewhat simplified, life is still complex. So yes, you can download a power of attorney or get one from your nephew who is a real estate attorney who can get you the power of attorney form, but you have to have all of these modifications that are very, very specific, right? Because the title companies, the life insurance companies, pension companies, various financial institutions, bank institutions, they all want to see this specific language. So yes, people can in fact do their own power of attorney, but at the end of the day, when crisis arises, attorneys like myself are running around and trying to get new power of attorneys done up because the old one is simply not sufficient. So you want to be made aware of that pitfall. So there are 3 different ways that property passes at death. So before I talk about the final document, the last will and testament, I just want to clarify how it is that property passes at death, right? Because this is important, especially when people are formulating an estate plan, right? So the first way of passing property at one's death is by operation of law. So if you happen to own joint property, you own your home as husband and wife, when the one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse automatically becomes the owner, right? You don't even have to redo the deed or anything. So by operation of law, the joint owner becomes the owner, ends up becoming the owner of the property when the first owner passes away. That's important to note because People all the time are putting their kids on their bank accounts. And I can't tell you how many issues arise from that, legal issues arise from putting kids on bank accounts, right? So so just as a side note, if you want your child to be able to write checks and pay your bills if you become ill, make sure your kid is named as your power of attorney and as your agent under the power of attorney. You got to have the power of attorney in document order, right? Your daughter doesn't need to be on your bank account in order for that to take place. So, because again, people are very surprised, that the joint owner of their bank account, when is going to become the owner when someone passes away. Maybe that wasn't explained to them when they went to the bank and the bank teller told them to put the kid on the account. Anyways, second way of passing property at death was by contract. So if you've got your 401k, IRA, life insurance, other types of accounts that you can list beneficiaries on, that is how that asset is going to pass at death. It's going to happen through the beneficiaries, right? So when you pass away, the life insurance company and the financial institutions, they're contractually obligated to pay out to the beneficiaries that you have listed, right? So in both of these instances, we're not even looking at the will, right? We only look to a person's will to determine how property is to pass when someone is gone, is when that person has passed away with an asset in their name alone and they do not have a beneficiary listed on it, right? So if someone passes away and they own a home and they didn't own it with anyone else, and so we would then have looked to the person's will to determine, okay, first of all, who's going to be in charge of the estate? That's the person listed under the will as the executor. And then who is ultimately going to end up with those assets. So that is the third way of passing property at death is the last one, testament. You're directing who will get the assets that you've owned individually at death. You're nominating a person, the executor as they're called, who will be responsible for distributing your assets, paying your bills, and then distributing your assets. And in the process of someone becoming an executor is not simply just being listed in a will. Literally, you have to, once the person passes away and you have a last will and testament that you have to use, and for an executor to get appointed, you're literally, presenting the will with some other documentation to the surrogate court. The court then checks in with all of the next of kin to determine if this is in fact the person's last will and testament. There is no other last wills and testaments out there. And once they've gone through this whole rigmarole, is referred to as a probate, right? The probate proceeding. Then somebody finally gets appointed. Right now in Erie County, it's taking about 6 months for anybody to get appointed, and that's if there's no hiccups. Also within a will, you can make charitable bequests. So you can specify a particular amount, or you can say that, you give a certain percentage of your estate to a charity. When again, the biggest thing I can tell you is that you need to be working with a trust and estates attorney, because I've seen sometimes you can tell that the person intended on giving more money to charities, but the way the will was drawn up, it's unfortunate that their wishes weren't going to be honored because it was kind of messed up. So you want to make sure that you're also considering, if it's best to do a percentage or a specific amount, and also if there's a particular way in which you want that charitable donation to be used. And then lastly, I just want to make mention, because people are coming in and coming off and say they want to leave money to, let's say, minor children, or they have a disabled child, and how best to do that. And that certainly is to set up a trust within your will. So it would say, everything to my children. If, however, a child is under the age of 25, that child's share of my estate will be held in trust. And then a trustee can ensure that that child spends the money wisely, or hands out the money to the child for particular purposes like education. And then at age 25 gives the remaining balance to that child. Also important to note that probably one of the bigger reasons I'm doing testamentary trusts is I'm meeting with spouses who have children from previous marriages. They're in a second relationship, a second marriage. They want to leave things to their spouse should they pass away, but they want guarantees that if that spouse should pass away, that everything reverts back to their children, or is going to be divided equally among both of their kids. So there's a lot of planning actually lately that I've been doing for that with older couples who are entering into a second marriage, and they want to make sure that their wishes are honored, but they're still providing for their life partner. So that's it. Any questions? I don't know how long it took. I honestly, it took my eye off the clock.
That's just one question from me on the power of attorney. So if somebody had their power of attorney done after 2009, that's what I've always gone by, they should be okay, or should they update it based on the provisions?
If they
June?
have if they did it after 2009, but before June, they have to have a power of attorney and a statutory gift rider. Unless they have no spouse, they don't have any beneficiaries, they never want to protect their assets if they ever enter into a nursing home, then maybe they wouldn't have a statutory gift rider, but like that's what you absolutely want to make sure they have that and that it's executed properly too. So that's the estate planning. Any other questions?
That was very eye-opening and has given me some to-do lists for myself and my parents. Or make sure they've done what they need to do.
Right.
You know, I think it's very, as you said, everyone says, well, we'll just put everything in the will and everything's fine. And it's not. So it's extraordinarily helpful.
Everybody pretty much leaves with homework from my office. Like I've never really said, you're all set. Like I am like, okay, you need to go to the bank because, you know, through your teacher's federal credit union, you have like these accounts. So maybe you use it for Christmas or whatever, but you know, if you pass away, it doesn't have a tremendous amount of money in it, but your husband doesn't want to hire an attorney like me to get a couple $1,000 out of your credit union account. You know what I mean? So I offer a ton of practical advice, as I'm sure Michael does as well, just to make people's lives easier. I mean, there's many times where I've saved people 3 times what they end up paying me to even get their documents in order, just because I'm just making them simple recommendations of making, you know, and getting their affairs in order. I mean, it's usually never less than an hour at least for the first meeting.
For sure. Anyone else have questions or comments?
Depressed. Okay. Just depressed.
No, you're enlightened, and now
I'm enlightened.
To do.
You don't want to overburden people before the holidays, so just put it on your to-do list for the new year.
That's right.
The resolution, and you make a good point, Elizabeth. People really should see an estate attorney, an elder care attorney. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, my brother-in-law Bob does real estate, I'll have them take care of this. And I'm like, no, you really need to talk to, you know, the podiatrist. You've got a foot problem, as Elizabeth said, and don't go to the, you know, the dermatologist for this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I see it all the time.
It'll catch on in the legal community at some point. It will catch on, but.
Kim, you got any questions? No, she's still driving.
Well, thanks for having us. I'm hoping that people were able to come.
Helpful.
Oh, yes, Kim.
It was very, very helpful. And like, I'm writing things for myself, and I'm writing things for my mom, and I'm writing things for my sisters. This is the conversation we've got to have after the new year.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we thank you all for your time, and,
Right.
you know, we hope that this will be helpful for people. Well, we know this will be helpful for people. There's probably a very few percentage of our friends and family have this all in order. So that everyone gets themselves in order. And then while they're doing this, think about their desire to maybe give to, you know, not-for-profit agencies to help out the greater community upon your exit in the world. And, you know, Buffalo Prenatal is one of them. There are many, but we, you know, want people to think about that as part of this evaluation process of your estate will. Preparedness. Emergency preparedness, really, I think, is another way of putting it, to prevent the future emergency. So they're not running to you, Elizabeth, you know, in crisis.
Right, because if you think people are stressed now, just thinking about it,
Right.
people are stressed while they're dealing with the health crisis, and they're like, I need to be with my mom,
Right.
but I'm running all over town, and I can't even begin to tell you what my parents' assets are.
Mhm.
Because my mom's been shredding things for years, or whatever the case is. So excellent. Well, thank you so much for having us. I
Thanks.
really appreciated it. And
Thank you.
if anybody has any questions, you know, you could just send them. You've got my email.
Mhm.
I'd be more than happy to answer questions.
All right.
Sa-
Thank you.
Same. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Michael. Okay, thank
No
you.
problem.
Goodbye.
Have a great